Hi, I'm Paul Marcel. If you've been following my podcast, you know that I'm a big fan of Qwas products, like his Qwas rail dogs, the shorter rail dogs, which were the original ones, and then the Qwas dogs. Now, he's recently come out with a new product called the Speed Dog, and it's been out for just a little bit of time, kind of on a preview basis, and I got one actually quite a while ago to preview and give some feedback on it. I'm really liking it because it has a lot of utility, especially for the way I'm working on my MFT. So what a speed dog is it's going to be like a Qwas dog that you anchor to your table, and it comes with a small disc on the top. Now I got this one anchored. Let me pop this out. So you're going to see that it's a familiar Qwas dog here on the bottom, and then you've got basically a donut that screws onto the top, and you can adjust the height. And what this is for quickly clamping something down so that you can use it off the edge of the table, and let me show you that. Now the speed dogs themselves, they come with the dog and this 1/4-20 bolt on the top, and then the donut. It needs something in order to anchor it down to the table. Now, most of us have the clamping elements from Festool, and those come with some of these knobs that everybody puts in a box and puts them away. So, goal for you is to find them. But what these were for is for clamping, holding the clamp down to the MFT. Now, in the case of the clamping elements, all the forces are lateral, so you don't really have the thing popping out of the table. In this case here with the Speed Dog, though, what it's doing is it's holding something down quickly to the table, so you're going to need something to anchor it. You can use another 8mm bolt if you have one. Then you can just thread it through something like a large washer, or maybe even a board that has a hole through it if you need to. So let me put this in the table so you can see how it goes. Just pop it into the hole, and then... So once you've got this here, now you can use it for a number of different operations. Now you don't have to move this constantly with each board. It makes it a little bit faster than using clamps off of your table. Normally when I would work on boards, like say this wafer board, say I'm running if I need to put some dominoes into the edge of this wafer board, it's really awkward to be doing it directly onto the table simply because of the thickness of this stock. The whole problem is that for it to be in the center, the domino is basically sitting on the table and it's not putting it exactly to the right position, so I'm going to start getting referencing errors. So in a way, in that case there, you want this off the edge of the table. It actually makes it a little bit easier to use anyway. Now, typically what I would do then is I would use these speed clamps to lock it into place. But what's nice about these speed dogs is, like, now that I put this in, I can just spin the donut back, you put this board here, and then you spin the donut till it just touches. All it has to do is touch to keep this from wanting to tip down. So now I could use the domino to plow mortises on the end or on the side here, and the best part about it is that when I'm done with this one here, you can grab the next one, and you just push it in and you're done. The edges are beveled so that this will easily slide in. It's very easy to adjust, so if I switch from this to some of the style stock, well, it's a little bit loose for this one here because it's thinner. I can just give it a quick spin, and I'm now down to being tight. Now, you wouldn't normally want to use it sticking this far out, so of course, in this case here, you would more push it into the side, like so. Now, I'm going to show you how to set up your speed dogs, because they come unassembled in this little pack here that you get from Steve Adams. And they're called Speed Dogs, non-stop woodworking dogs. So make sure you go take a nature break before you start, because you're not going to stop. So the two parts of this kit are the Qwas dog that's been threaded, and it's been threaded for a 1/4-20 bolt on the top, and then it's threaded for 8mm on the bottom, because that's what you're going to be using from your clamping elements to hold it down. Now initially the donut's going to be separate, and then you got the 1/4-20 bolt here on the top. What I did for mine, there is a small nut on here, and if you look at Steve's website describing this, he uses it. You can use it as kind of a stop to limit how high this donut goes, but I find that I don't really need it for that. What I really rather use it for is as a thrust nut on the bottom. So what I do, I'm just backing this out so you can see, is I only screw this in about this far. You only need it to go sort of clearing this top. You're limited to how far you can go through here anyway because it's threaded with two different threadings. So I go about this far in, and then I put this as a thrust nut near the bottom to limit where this screw can come out. The reason is when I'm screwing this to the table and I'm using the clamping elements handle here, I want to hang on to this, otherwise it tends to spin in the hole. So it's a lot nicer if I use it as a thrust nut, and then it just makes it perfect. So the first task is, of course, after you screw it off the dog, then you're going to take the nut off because that was already threaded on here. Alright, now we got it. So you put this into the donut, Fortunately, once you get it onto the donut, this one goes a little bit faster because you got a little bit of momentum to use. Then you put the nut on. Now put it into the top of the dog. I gave it 10 turns, 10 full turns. That seems to get it to the right place. Now, just spin the nut. Grab your favorite crescent wrench. I use a metric crescent wrench. And just give that a little bit of a snug. You don't need to crank on it, you just need to snug it up so that this thing here doesn't want to unscrew very easily. And at this point, it's fine. So now it's very easy to use. You're just going to put this into the table and then use the knob from the clamping elements to hold it down. Now you can adjust away when you want to use it. Now actually I put it in this position for a reason. The reason is when you're using some of these narrow stock, you can just push it in on the one side if you have one. But if you happen to have two, then you have the benefit of being able to kind of pinch it between the two. So now it's not going to even slide away from you. And it's very, very easy to push it in, adjust, slide it back, slide it forward, whichever way you need to go. If you had, say, a style that you had a number of dominoes to plow into there, it's going to be very, very easy for you to use it this way. I mean, you are going to want to hang on to the stock for really good registration, but at the same time, for the most part, it's being held in there in place for you. Very easy to slide out and put your next piece of stock in place. So I have two. Steve sent me two, but I think if I were getting some, I would get two simply because I really like the idea of being able to use them in a cross registration like that, especially even if, with this wafer board sample scrap that I've got, if I placed the other one here, it would be very easy to have this very well anchored in two places, and it doesn't take any more time. Now, besides the obvious use of the domino on here when you've got it, say, crossed like this to hold it into place, I mean, if you were doing some work with your jigsaw, this is nice because you're off the edge of the table, and that's another case where you really need to be off the edge of the table. If you wanted to do just some simple, say, rounding over of some pieces, it doesn't have to be narrow pieces like this, it could be a larger panel that you're establishing with maybe one or two of these dogs. Well, then you could use like the MFK 700 to just run it around the edge. Make sure that you're not going to go into a place where it's possible that it can push it out like here. As long as you're always pushing into the dogs so that they're holding it in place, you're going to be just fine with that. If you got one of these, a little handsaw, you can use that off the edge here. That's usually where I have a hard time, is because when I go to use a handsaw just to trim something really quickly, I do the thing where I just kind of lean on it, and then it binds a little bit, and then it twists. That's my own fault for being too lazy to do it, but now that I have these, I'm going to try making sure I never do that again. Now, another possibility that you have that I don't have my spoke shaves here, I lent them out to a friend, but if you're doing shaping, one of the things I find really awkward about shaping with a spoke shave is mostly clamping and holding. Now, with my Moxon vise, I have a couple modifications that I made to it that make it so I can kind of clamp at an angle, and then it basically holds the stick out for me to do some shaping. Now, here, I mean, this is going to be great that if I wanted to just do some simple rounding or some casual shaping of this leg here, if this was going to be a leg for a small table, it would actually be pretty easy to do, even with these dogs just holding it in place. And the benefit of that is a lot of times, well, it would be square stock, not rectangular stock, but you normally end up rotating quite often as you're doing the shaping. So it'd be nice that you could pop it in, rotate, pop it in, rotate, pop it in, just as you're going around and working the stock. So while I won't say this is going to get rid of your need for using some of the quick clamps and such on the table, I think that this is really going to help out with a lot of those simple things where you ended up spending a lot of time monkeying with a clamp to clamp it. You do one or two quick plunges and then you have to unclamp just for the sake of being off the edge of the table. It's just so much more convenient. Now, I've been showing all the work pieces kind of hanging very far off the work surface. You're not really going to want to go any further than you need to. So if you're doing some domino work here on the end, something like that, and you choke up on it, make sure that you're not going to be getting any interference from the MFT top, not letting the domino register fully. But at the same time, you don't want to be way out here where things are going to start flexing and stuff. So just keep it kind of choked up tight. It makes it easy that it's very easy to move. And you can see that I've changed boards to a wider board here. I just had to move the dog over for the case of this board. But if I needed to go back to doing some styles, you can see that, well, while before I had it set so that I was standing here, it's still going to work just fine with this one here. Once I change the height, now I'll be doing the work over here. So it's very easy that if you give yourself a little bit of a wider stance with two of them, you can pretty much just be moving yourself around here in front of the table with any narrow size stock or wider stock. So I've had these Speed Dogs for about a month now, and I'm really enjoying them. They add a whole dimension of sort of rapid clamp work down onto the MFT system. And from watching my podcast and actually the MFT system review I did earlier that the Qwas dogs themselves and the rail dogs are something I use integrally, constantly on my MFT system. It just adds a whole nother dimension to it for making certain things that were doable but a little awkward on the MFT now become really trivial to do and accurate. So with this adding as a hold down, it just adds more utility to your already very useful MFT system. Now that said, this isn't limited to an MFT. This does not take advantage or require taking advantage of the accuracy of this milled top. All it needs is a 20mm hole for this dog. So in a way, on this other bench that I have over here, now I did actually plow a bunch of 20mm holes in the same fashion as an MFT top for this one, but if I had just a regular top, or even my Moxon vise, if you've seen that Moxon vise, I am planning on drilling a couple 20mm holes in that so that I could use this on that back table that I have, so that when I'm doing some of the cutting and such there, it'd be really easy to then take the pieces, pivot them up near the top, and away you go. One other advantage of these speed dogs is that this is actually a Qwas dog here at the bottom that's been threaded with a quarter hole. Now, I actually had some in the past threaded for me by Steve as a custom order, and they come in very useful for doing jigs and hold downs. So, in a way, when you have this, you've got that. You've got one that's already threaded on the top for that, for the quarter 20 hole. And also, it's a regular Qwas dog, so you could use 2 of these or however many of the speed dogs you have, you can use them as a regular Qwas dog. So it makes it nice that if you already have 2 Qwas dogs and then you get a couple of these, well, now you've actually increased your arsenal to having 4. And that comes in very handy when you're trying to do squaring operations on your table. So, give them a try if you like. I think you're going to be happy with them. Now, we do have to give credit to Nora Nordrum, who suggested this whole idea to Steve, and then Steve went ahead and made them. So, thanks, Noah.